Hi, everyone. My name is Kurt Bachman, and welcome back to The Ultimate Dish. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with someone who's at the forefront of culinary excellence. Meet Ragnar Fridriksson, the managing director of the World Association of Chef Societies, headquartered in the culinary mecca of Paris, France. Now, what makes this conversation even more exciting today is that World Chefs is not just any organization. They're one of our educational partners here at Escoffier. As a non-political professional organization, World Chefs is a global culinary authority dedicated to elevating the standards of cuisine worldwide, with an influential presence spanning 110 countries. And Ragnar is more than just a managing director. He's a true culinary maestro. With over 25 years of experience under his belt, he's worn many hats or toques as consultant, published food and wine author, food photographer, sommelier, lecturer, and entrepreneur. He's also the host of World on a Plate, a podcast presented by World Chefs. In each episode, Ragnar engages top chefs and experts in captivating discussions about food, innovations, industry news, and more. So join me today as we chat about strategies for culinary professionals to elevate their careers and explore why upskilling is an absolute necessity in the ever-evolving culinary industry. And there he is. Good morning, or good evening,
Hey.
I should say.
Yes, good morning to you. Good evening here in Paris. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. The honor is mine. It's we see each other now and again on Zoom. I'm so honored that you take the time. And before we get into you and World Chefs, what's happening? It's October in Paris. It must be brisk and beautiful and still populated with lots of tourists.
Oh yeah, and Paris. We should be getting into the autumn time, but it's quite hot for the season, and we'll just see in this more and more. And we talk about climate change, and this is
Yeah.
we have in World Chefs, and it leaves nobody untouched. But Paris is buzzing and really lively, and the weather is still very nice. So we enjoy life.
I love it. I communicate. We'll talk about Michel Escoffier in a little bit, and he pops back and forth between London and Nice, and on occasion in Paris, and it's always nice to be able to chat with him. I'm just on my first cup of coffee this morning, and you're about to put dinner on the table in Paris. I'm curious. Are you cooking tonight? Are you going out tonight? Who's doing the cooking tonight?
I'm cooking tonight. I have this Spanish cut of pork called the pluma.
Okay,
With
yes,
I don't think
yes.
you get that in the US. Yeah,
I don't think so. No.
One of the
Yeah.
like secreto pluma. So
Okay.
it's beautifully tender and greasy, and I'm gonna cook that tonight. Yeah.
And what will accompany that?
I'm gonna confit some onions with some spices, Oriental spices, some cumin and coriander and paprika. So I'm gonna confit them in that, and just sort of glaze with a balsamico vinegar, and it's sort of really gonna be sort of confit with some green peppers, like the Spanish peppers. They love to grill those green peppers and onions and some potatoes in the oven. So.
And maybe a little Spanish wine to
There
go along
will
this.
be. There will be.
I love it. I love it. Before we're going to speak a lot about World Chefs today, and I'd love for you to give a perspective. There's obviously chef organizations in France and in Germany and here in the United States and all around the world. It would be wonderful for you to give some insight into what that org chart looks like, or what that hierarchy looks like, because I think it's fascinating. I'd love to talk about Singapore, which I'm seeing behind you there. But before all of that, let's, it's not on the script, but I would just love for you to talk a little bit about who you are and where you, fell in love with cooking and how that became such a passion in your life.
Yeah, I come from Iceland, which like back in the days, restaurant industry, cooking was not such a common thing. But just so happened that my father left Iceland quite early on. I was only 12 at the time to England, and he had his business, he and his wife, and we would go a lot to restaurants. And they were in the travel industry, so I had the chance to travel and go to restaurants and hotels, and I really fell in love with the hospitality environment. And so I knew from 16-year-old that I wanted to work in hospitality, and so I started in the cooking school and the catering school in Iceland, in Reykjavik, Iceland. And I was working there for some period of time, but I knew I needed to get out of the country and see the world because there's so much out there. And so that just took me one step, took me to another. It was an unexpected road. And I think that's actually for young people coming into the industry. If I sorry, Kirk, just
no, I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Along, is that it's hospitality is such an amazing place, whether you're in the culinary or the front office, and we have so much in common with receiving people and being in the openness and sharing with others, and I think for young people who would like to have a career that is dynamic and it's people oriented and it's sharing and it's openness, and hospitality is such a great industry. I know it has its constraints, but when you're passionate, there is a lot of career paths, and I'm just an example of that. Because from there, where you just mentioned, I was cooking, and then I went into the front office, and I took a degree in restaurant management, hotel management. Then from there, a sommelier. Somehow stumbled onto food photography, was a publisher working with a lot of chefs and champagne houses in the Champagne region, doing cooking books and all sort of events, and brought into Worldchefs sometime later. And who would have guessed,
No, I love it. And I love the passion. When you go to the Worldchefs site too, it's very clear that the theme is around young people, getting young people excited, giving them pathways, pointing them in the right direction if they're interested in this type of career. It's interesting because Colorado recently became the 5th state in the nation, I believe, 5th or 6th state, to welcome the Michelin stars to the state. So we have 5 that received an actual star, and then several other restaurants that were recognized for different levels. And to your point, I was last night, in fact, I went to dinner at one of those restaurants that received 1 Michelin star, Frasca, here in Boulder, Colorado. And I was so moved and taken back because the young man who served us and took care of us is a Escoffier graduate from 4 or 5 years ago, and started in the kitchen and made his way through the various stations of the restaurant and landed in the front of the house, and has this unbelievable. I was so impressed with his knowledge of wine and his passion for service, and it was an unexpected, beautiful evening. So when you talk about hospitality, and there's so many books out there today about unreasonable hospitality and just going over the top to take care of people. So I appreciate that, and I want to kind of connect. I'm sort of fascinated with Scandinavian cuisine, the cuisine of Iceland, which wasn't always, like you mentioned at the beginning, that recognized, right? And I believe there's at least one. Are there more than 1 Michelin stars in Iceland currently?
There is one in Iceland. Yeah, as far as I know, there is one in Iceland, and I think the Michelin Guide, they cover the Nordic countries. So
yes, yeah,
with Norway, Denmark, and yeah, we have the first Michelin star in Iceland now. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, obviously, it started with the Michelin brothers, trying to sell more tires, right, and create more traffic
on the road.
between Paris and Lyon, right? And any thoughts on? There's so much conversation about what Michelin was and what it is today. I'm terribly excited. I have a relationship with at least a few of the restaurants that received recognition, and so much hard work, decades of service, and to be rewarded is really exciting for me. And sitting in Paris, do you have any perspective on on, the magnitude of that. Paris probably has more Michelin stars, 1, 2, and 3, Bib Gourmand, than any country in the world, of course. But any perspective on what that means with other cities having the opportunity to host Michelin starred restaurants?
No, it's a great recognition, and just to put it into perspective, people might not realize that Iceland is a population of 360,000 people.
Yeah.
So it's like a little neighborhood.
It's a neighborhood. It's a neighborhood, right? Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
but really was a change maker. Well, there are two change makers, really. Is the booming tourism industry with air flights have become so common now through the transatlantic, and so the tourism has become booming because due to all sort of factors that Iceland has been put on the map, and so you see some stars, influencers go in there, and so it's creating more attraction. And then so that's on the tourism side because you need customers. But then the second factor, I think, is also sort of an awakening within the Nordic countries, and Iceland included. When these sort of started with the Norwegians going to the Bocuse d'Or, and the Nordic countries followed, and sort of they got the philosophy of what Bocuse d'Or is. And the philosophy is close to Escoffier, is like you use what is around you, what you have around you available. Use that as inspiration. Don't try to find an inspiration. If you're Icelandic, why would you want to do a fusion between Thai and Italian and Mexican and make it all into a combination?
Yeah.
Use the inspiration from your mother's kitchen or your father's kitchen if he cooked, and whatever you have around you in your environment. Use that to excel, make it sort of push that to as far as you can in terms of flavors and memories, and that's how you create an identity. And that's what Nordic have been very good at for some time now, is that getting that identity through their cuisine. It makes it authentic.
And the people of those countries in particular have really rallied around. I mean, as you know, Bocuse d'Or, they've done very, very, very well in recent years. With gold, silver, bronze, so on and so forth. Is that something that in your mind took a long time in Iceland, for example, for people to embrace a population of 300,000 people to embrace something so fascinating as cooking on a main stage?
Yeah, and this is funny you ask that, because I had the same question for one of the Bocuse d'Or winners on my podcast, and Catherine Guérin, who is head of the Bocuse d'Or Winners Academy. So asking her, why did the Nordics become so dominant over so many years in the Bocuse d'Or, and also in other competition like the Olympics or what have you, in World Chef competition, and in our own Global Chef Challenge? Regularly, the Nordics will take at least one of the top 3 places, if not all 2 or 3 of them. So and so her answer, because I'm sort of hard for me to look inside, but she, as a French person, knowing that mentality of the Nordics, is that, well, we do come from tough climate, we do come from a tough background. If you go back in centuries, and we have this innate way of working together and collaborating is a survival thing. When you work, when you're in a very hostile climate, you need to work together to get things done. And so the Nordic countries have got this collaboration between all the chefs in all those countries, is to share the experience and help your neighbor rise, and that'll help you also get higher. And so it's that sharing experience that helps us sort of advance faster and higher, and sort of finding the key to how to best compete and how to be the best competitor. And of course, it's about competition. It's about, on the day of competition, you want to know what the judges want. You want to be in your top form, like any athlete. So you get there as an athlete. You train to the maximum, and so this is sort of that culture of collaboration that has helped, I think, these small countries to come to this level.
Yeah, and a genuine happiness for the victories that they've seen over the years. So a really great lesson in terms of collaboration. Important for our students to understand that as well as they enter the industry. Boy,
Absolutely.
that's a whole nother podcast. So we're gonna have to have, part two, and that's gonna be just talking about competition. I want to spend as much time as you have on World Chefs, right?
Mm.
Used to be called World Association of Cook Societies, and then it was called WACS for a minute. I
Yeah.
love that we've gone to the one word, World Chefs. It says a lot, right?
It does,
And
yeah. It's still, just to correct, it's still called the World Association of Chef Societies, and
sure,
that's the full name. But as you said, it was hard to to communicate the word wax. It got mixed
sure,
up lots of terminologies.
sure, sure.
World Chef says it all in one word, doesn't it? It's
It
world
really
chefs. Hmm.
it does. It does. And that's what I'm hoping to share today, to
Yeah.
really share that literacy so people have a great understanding, especially our young, students and chefs and cooks that are listening. So take us back, chef, 90 years, to the Sorbonne in Paris.
Yeah.
And in your words, what was the mission, and who got this going, and why was this put in place? And probably not a terribly different story than other associations like the ACF and such, but really fascinated about the genesis of World Chefs.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity. And just so, like, I think actually the first phrase is like in my mind when I talk to people, I say, World Chefs is like United Nations of chefs. So we are not an individual association of individual members. We are a federation of national chef associations in over 100 countries. So ACF in the US is our member. So they are one part of our membership, and we have this similar in 110 countries now, which sort of, if we want to expand, we have to find another planet because we're sort of reaching the limit of how many countries are on the planet. That's how many members we have. We will never reach any
Fascinating.
further than
Yes,
that.
yes,
And
yes.
so it was founded in, as you said, 1928. Escoffier, Auguste Escoffier was the our founding president, and it was to get together the association. The US was a part of that, ACF was a part of that. Another 26 nations, mostly in Europe and the US, were a part of that first constitution. And the idea at the time was to get the profession together, the chefs together, to discuss not only cuisine, but it was about working rights and union rights and the conditions in our industry. At the same time as networking and sharing and exchanging and creating and sort of, so the mission is to improve the standards of our cuisines globally. So through all those things, and yeah, that's the mission we still follow today. It's really what we do is get the chefs together, network, and try to get the industry the standards, raising the standards globally.
I love that, and it's so I can't help but, and thank you for saying that. I had it written down that I was going to bring Auguste up a little bit, but you did it so eloquently.
Yeah.
Everything aligns, right, for what he
Yeah.
stood for, 100 years ago, around humanity and diversity and conditions in the kitchen, and yeah, could you? I mean, you're part
Yeah,
of
that's right.
historian as well. I'd love for you to connect the dots on how that became the
That is
foundation.
right. I mean, Auguste Escoffier is extremely known for the reason of his cuisine. Many people would not maybe know what that actually entails. In France, he's well known for this person who established the brigade and organized the cuisine and whatever. What less people know is he was extremely socially minded, of developing young people, taking care of your brigade, ensuring that if you got injured or ill or you had security, that as a family the brigade will take care of you. And so it was sort of a social security before its time. He was extremely minded on the well-being of the people around him. So, and this is why as I say, like, I think following in his footsteps when we do our social projects, it's not deviating from the mission. It's really following I think Auguste Escoffier's is his vision and his wish for us as a profession.
I was talking to Michelle a couple of weeks ago about something different, and I let him know that we were going to chat, and he he shared, when he was last there, I think it was 2016, he mentioned. But we talked about the medal that you award
Right. Right.
now and again. And I think it's fascinating that the Escoffier medal, as offered by World Chefs, to an individual who doesn't necessarily need to be a chef. It's just someone, and I wrote that down this morning, but could you speak to why that's so important?
Yeah, and I think that sort of follows what I was just mentioning is that what is it? What was Escoffier about? Is people that have a major impact on our profession and who supported the profession, not necessarily needs to be a chef, but really followed in that same vision and back to humanity, mindfulness, and developing young skills, developing talent, helping others to reach higher ground.
Yeah, so well said, well said. In your time and in your understanding, Chef, of the initiatives that were the original vision, if you will, to where we are today through a pandemic, through other challenges, through different cuisines, through whole cuisine and plant-based cuisine. How has the organization shifted its focus with regard to making sure that they acknowledge everything that's going on around us?
It's been a major shift, in the organization also has taken a big step towards being more inclusive and enlarging our network. Even before COVID, one of our great goals was how do we attract and retain more young talent in our industry, and this is in very concrete actions is what we started the education partnerships, the education network that you are now a part of. Before it might have seen from the outside as being a bit more exclusive around competitions and events, and this is something where we wanted to reach out to more and address a bigger audience of all culinarians when they come out of school, is that they know that they belong to a bigger family, and that there is so much to be discovered and so much to be experienced when they actually realize that. And for your students to understand that when they come out of your school, that they are a part of their national their national teams of culinarians, but there's a global network out there they can tap into, and I think that is where we want to be, is talking to the young people.
Identical to the conversation I had with Chef Clancy not too long ago. So it's a consistent message across the board. I love that. On a personal note, in the time that you've been leading this organization, are there some moments that stand out from others as your proudest moments?
I mean, I think my proudest moment is my proudest moment. Sort of overall, what I'm mostly proud of is to have been given this opportunity and there's this trust to work for World Chefs and help develop. My role is really to try to put in place some tools to allow chefs to emancipate themselves, to do all this. A lot of the work that we do are done by volunteers. So my job is to try to put in place the resources that allows them to go and do these amazing things that we're doing. And if I would take one example of what we've achieved is, for example, our Like a Chef program. Mm-hmm. Like a Chef program came through just traveling around the world, realizing, well, not only we have a lot of skill shortage in our industry, we see hotels popping up everywhere. And actually, from a trip of mine in the Philippines, you see hotels building up everywhere. And it's just not so far away. There are people living in pure misery and with no opportunity to have a livelihood or ever provide for their families. And the idea came from that point on, is like, how can we bridge this gap? And so Like a Chef became a program that is, we could call a poverty alleviation. It's actually bringing people out of poverty, underprivileged people from poverty into industry. And so through some skills training and give them livelihood and being able to provide for their families. And that is what I would say changes people's lives, can change nations' lives, because poverty is such a burden on societies. And once we can give people that pride in themselves to be able to work with their hands and provide for their families, we solve so many problems in our societies. So that is something that will stay with me as a proud moment, and it's not finished, because we just trained 1,000 people already around the world in different centers, such as in Brazil, in Sweden, in Russia, in Poland, in Ukraine, in Egypt, in South Africa. We're starting, in France we're going to start as well. So
thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you for the beautiful work. And along those same lines, I was going to ask Ragnar, you've been very instrumental in launching sustainability initiatives, Feed the Planet, World Chefs Without Borders. Could you elaborate on these a little bit along the same lines as Like a Chef, and how these specific initiatives have contributed to the organization's mission, and then perhaps by default to the broader culinary industry?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember back in 2012, we signed the Declaration for Feed the Planet. And it was really born at the time because, we could see sustainability was becoming a topic. It wasn't as hot and accepted, globally accepted as today. But we could see policymakers going to Davos and, they're talking between themselves, big industry with politicians and coming out and with declarations. And we thought they should be talking to the chefs. Well, why? Because we are in the center of the food chain. We are expert buyers. We have choices to make. We can, where we find our purveyors, how we select our products, generate our menus. We can select, we can make choices that change. And very fortunately, we are influencers towards consumers. One of the most trusted profession in the world today is the chef. Even more than doctors in some ways. If the chef says, like, this is how you should do and do and do, we can influence consumers. And we should do so with not knowing what we're doing. So this is when we thought, well, let's make a change. We have to change ourselves first. And so let's start with, if we want to educate anybody, let's educate ourselves. So this is where we started the educational sustainability education, which is now in 8 languages, and now it's available online, and it's available for your school, for any of our education partners to take, adapt, and teach to their own students. And we do a lot of trainers just to get the word out, so chefs understand what are the choices they have in their cuisine that can make a difference, and how do they present that to consumers. So we are being a agent for positive change. That was the first step. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. Well, and we'll take it a next step, because I imagine this is part of the agenda, and I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the upcoming biennial World Chefs Congress and Expo in Singapore next October, right? And so a premier networking event, culinary leaders, innovators. Can you paint a picture for our audience of what the purpose of these gatherings are, what experiences and takeaways can attendees expect from these events? How many people attend these events, and who's the guest speaker next year, or the keynote, I should say?
So no, absolutely, and it is really a great event where our industry comes together. It's all chefs. We have about 4. So there are 2 sort of separate parts of the Congress. It's the actual Congress, the plenary session, will take place at the beautiful Marina Bay Sands. That's in Singapore, with a big ship on the top there. Yeah, and so we have 3 full days of keynote speakers, and we have some demos and panel discussions, really on topics that are the hot topics of the industry today. And that's management and skills shortage and education and the future of education and the sustainability with different various alternative proteins, food waste, and we're gonna touch base on all of these subjects. At the same time, we have the Young Chef Forum. So Young Chef Forum actually is for young people 25 and younger, and they would be your students typically. They have a special rate, but they get a better program. So they always make the older guys jealous because we're gonna take them out and do hands-on, and they're gonna be taken care of by the young people in Singapore and get some hands-on experiences and visit things and so on. So we have about 1,000 chefs on average in a congress, and we do a social event. So with it includes all the get together, the social dinners, gala dinner, what have you. Now that's the congress part. It's not finished because in Singapore will be buzzing that week. And so from there, when the Congress ends, we're going to have the Global Chef Challenge competition, the World Finals. So the finalists are those who won the right to be there through the regional semifinals. So every continent is competing. The Global Chef are the seniors. That are the Young Chef Challenge with 25 and younger, the Global Pastry Chef Challenge, and now for the first time, the Global Vegan Chef Challenge. Oh, wow. So 4 competitions happening over 4 days at the trade show called Food and Hotel Asia, FHA, which is Asia's most buzzing, biggest food show with so much happening on the food scene in Singapore. So we'll have the Pastry World Cup Asia final will be at the same event. So you will have all the best pastry chefs going to to Lyon the year after. All that get together in a big trade show of 10 halls, and Singapore having so much to offer with all their street food and all their history that they have, plus the Michelin star restaurants. You mentioned who are the keynote speakers. We are now talking to 3 Michelin stars, Julien Roger in 3 Michelin stars in Singapore. Some of the best pastry chef in the world, Janice Wong, who was voted Asia top female pastry chef and the best 50 best. We're still building the program, but it's going to be a very exciting program with very eclectic topics. So it's it's really going to be an event of learning and networking.
Congratulations! It must be a pretty big team that has to help you get that organized. Yeah, every other year, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's a big organization behind that, and yes, a lot of volunteers to put together the company. Yeah. You get a lot of help from everywhere, from the local chefs in Singapore, from the local schools like at Sunrise in Singapore, that they help us out with bringing their students to help out, and so it'd be great to see your students coming over. And this is where they also meet and network. I'll tell you a story about that. So I know that we had one of the first Young Chef forums was back in 2002, I think. This is when we had a congress in New Zealand. A 20-year-old Icelandic went along with his president to visit the Young Chef Forum, met some people, great people, made some friendship, and 3 months later he was working at 3 Michelin star, the Fat Duck in outside of London. So the connection you make, you cannot get this behind your desk or in your kitchen if you do not go out and reach out.
Sure. Networking is so important. Another comment you made earlier was around upskilling, and it's obviously kind of a buzzword right now in the industry, leveling up your skills and competencies in any field, not just ours. There's a recent report out there that suggests that 75% of workers who participated in an upskilling program of some sort were able to advance their careers. It's really a high number. If 7 out of every 10 people who engage are improving their life. So from your perspective, Chef, specifically as it relates to World Chefs, why is upskilling an absolutely critical piece of today's hospitality and culinary industry?
Yeah, I know, and we've been working a lot on that matter since COVID. We felt that it was our
Sure.
duty to help our community when the people were sitting at home and this is where not knowing what tomorrow will bring is like, well, we'd have to get ready for tomorrow. And so we felt that we had to be the glue to bind that community together. This is actually when people needed associations and us, the network, the most. And so we really worked hard at not only getting our partners to have different content of various levels of content of all sort of upskilling. I'm not just talking about creative food innovations, but yeah, that as well. How to reduce your food waste, how to recycle your food, how to upcycle your food. A lot about sustainability and get on the trend, understand what is happening, how your consumers in the future are going to demand for more vegan or this or that, and how you can be ready, you can be future proof. And so a lot about leadership, mental health, technology, all these things that, how they are going to impact the future of our industry, how we manage people, how we hire people, how we lead, how we train, all these things, So we wanted to bring all that together, and we still are. We haven't. The subject is ever ongoing, but also, so what we talked about upskilling and we have our own global certification. It's not just about. It's also about like learning, but also making your skills more visible. Making your skills visible, basically, just to show to yourself and to your potential employers and your colleagues and around you that being a culinary professional, being a chef, being a cook, is not just a one line job. It has a lot of aspects to it and multiple ways you can evolve within that profession in so many ways. And it's only by being open-minded and collecting knowledge about your industry, the people, the future of technology and the consumer behavior and so that you can achieve that. And so important for us was not only to organize these seminars, but also using our digital badging, the credentialing, sort of as a gamification to help chefs showcase their skills, showcase that you are active, you are learning, you are moving forward, and so make them in that sense not just they would be better positioned in the working market, but also with the pride that it brings to them as the pride in their profession.
Absolutely. Along those lines, I always tell my students and I tell our instructors that when you're learning, you're the best instructor you can possibly be. When you're learning, you're the best student that you can possibly be. We'll talk about global certification in just a moment, but as we talk about upskilling, the narrative is often around the organization that requires the staffing, right? So how can upskilling support this hotel group and this restaurant group and that sort of thing? I'm curious from your perspective how upskilling can also improve a cook or a chef's career trajectory. So almost in a selfish way, right? So how is the upskilling? I mean, the obvious is getting better at the craft, but is there a theme or some literacy around how is upskilling really benefiting not just the organization but the individual who's going through it?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right on that. I think it's absolutely true that when we feel that we are learning, we feel that we are moving forward. It motivates us to higher achievements. The fact of being stranded or suffocating or just stuck in a place is not motivating individually to help you get up in the morning and say, I love what I'm doing.
Sure,
it's that thrill of learning and advancing in your life that sort of it feeds. It's a positive circle that is so important, that you keep yourself on your toes and challenge yourself. And achievements may also they reinforce your belief in yourself.
Such a positive message for students, for the students that are listening to this. I love that. I love that. Perfect segue into the global certification for the hospitality industry, which I believe is the only international benchmark that we have for hospitality professionals. Could you spend a little bit of time on explaining how the certification process works specifically?
Yeah. I mean, it's quite rare in any industry, in fact, and it is a unique program. And the reason why we did this, actually, back to what I was saying, is that we want to help help the chefs make their skills visible, show them there is a career path within the culinary profession. And so we mapped out, what does it really mean to be at a certain position in a kitchen? What is it, what you should know from when you come out of school? You're usually at a commis chef level. Maybe you've got some additional working experience that will throw you right into a chef de partie. And from there, as you advance in your career to a sous chef or a chef de cuisine, executive chef or a master chef, same applies for the pastry chef or the pastry executive chefs or master chefs. And also we mapped out what it means to be a culinary educator. That is very relevant for you and your team and at Escoffier, because being an educator is a job. It is and it's not just necessarily the best chef will be the best educator. It's actually guiding with mindfulness and getting across a message and inspiring. So we definitely take seriously that part of our profession that is mentoring and guiding and leading. So we mapped out what does that mean, and it's not an exam. It is not a school. It's not a study program. It's actually let's say if you were now at the level where you become a chef de cuisine, you would apply because you're employed as a chef de cuisine. You would apply for that level of being certified, and that means that you need to prove to us that you have the skills acquired to be accepted at that level. And those skills are not just to show us that you can cook. We already know you can cook because you come to this level and you went to a cooking school, and then we see you gradually getting higher in your profession. In addition to being able to cook, it means that you have to show evidence that you have made some signature dishes, and that's evidence-based, and that you also show some managerial skills, that you've led a team of a brigade, and we need to show that you do know how to do the menu planning, the costing, and all the administrative parts of being a chef, being an efficient chef de cuisine. So all that we will put into an evidence-based online form, where with testimonials and job descriptions and what have you, that allows us to evaluate, and that's how it works, really.
So it's very pragmatic then. It's this validation of evidence while you're in the craft versus, as you mentioned, taking a test, right? That's
right. That's right. Because we're really catering to the employer side. We can also go into a big corporate, a hotel, or what have you, and we can map out how people are internally, how they're externally recruited, internally how they go higher in the ladder, how they're internally trained, what is their job descriptions, and what do they need to know to be able to master their profession. And it's a very interesting point on that is that we have in our profession so many individuals who have no formal training. They might have been working, and we see this a lot in Asia. For example, they might have been in working at the same employer for 20 years without ever having any certificate that validates their skills. With this program, we can validate those skills because we are really looking at what they are doing on the day-to-day job, and are they performing according to their employer.
Makes total sense. World Chefs also recognizes institutions across the world that embody the foundation of culinary education excellence. I'm proud to say that Escoffier is a World Chefs recognized school, and have been for a bit. What sort of qualifications does World Chefs look for in a school, an organization, in order to meet the seal of recognition, if you will? And along those lines, Ragnar, why is that important in your mind for an aspiring student cook or chef to look for that?
Yeah, to be brutally blunt, when we set and created this program of recognizing quality culinary education, let's just put it like it was actually to separate the bad apples from the good apples. This is why it's so important for students to understand when they want to become culinarians, they cannot think that there are shortcuts. And education has become a big business in the world, and there are a lot of people out there selling fast certificates, promising to become a celebrity chef within 6 months by learning 6 recipes or what have you. And so we really wanted to set a standard for our industry for the future and saying, well, hey, for a culinary profession to be serious, there are certain standards, there are certain basics you have to have come through. And so this is so this is very important for us, is that we set those standards for that individuals are sure that they have the competencies necessary for them when they go into employment. Very important for employers. So we look at the evidence in the schools, such as their staff, their curriculums, their very important their relationship with the employers, and how their students are actually employable after they come out of school. So all these criteria come into account, what we call the 12 step to excellence.
Perfect. So we're coming towards the end. We can't end the show. I still have a few questions, so the dish tonight's going to have to wait just a moment more. But World on a Plate, brilliant podcast. I've watched episodes. Even the way you presented yourself today, Chef. We were joking about it at the beginning. Perfect backdrop. Your audio is perfect. Your video is perfect. So appreciate the professionalism. You're a true showman. We can find World on a Plate on Apple, Spotify. I think you're up over 90 episodes. I'm catching up with you. I think we'll hit 100 episodes at the end of this year for the Ultimate Dish. Michelle Escoffier will be our 100th episode, which I think will air in December. But you've had some phenomenal chefs, great personalities. I haven't been on your show yet, hint, hint.
You must.
But I want to say congratulations. It's a lot of fun to have someone on the show, but it's also, it's important. I think it's important for your message to be shared, for your voice to be heard, for us to collaborate, for us to network, for students to hear. What inspired you to do World on a Plate?
Very frankly, actually, it hadn't occurred to me before until COVID came, and we felt the weight that we had to be there for our members, and we have to communicate, and we have to get a positive message across. So it's, in a sense, it's actually a thanks to our ex-president and friend Charles Carroll, who we both know, that he had already been experimenting with the podcast, and he was the one who brought it to our table and said, Ragnar, hey, you take care of this show. You be the man, and become the glue of our community. I tell you where it happened. I was on a trip. I was actually in Indonesia, going to the Food and Hotel Asia in Singapore when lockdown happened. And I was stuck there. I was stuck in Indonesia for several weeks because all the borders were shut. And I actually, the first podcast I actually ran from there.
Wow. Isn't that something serendipitous, right?
Yes.
Through your shows and the people that you've hosted, any illuminating trends or innovations that you encountered through the podcast that are reshaping the way you're thinking about food, the way World Chefs is thinking about food, the way we should be thinking about food?
Yeah, on so many levels, and I know, there's, of course, we've touched base a lot on sustainability matters, whether it's seafood or aquaculture or vegan trends and what have you. What I've also seen a lot, and sort of what I see a trend is management tomorrow. We need to take care of our people. We need to invest more in our people, and just realizing how much social issues we have within our profession. And we have podcasts on eating disorders, on drug abuse, on suicidal thoughts, on not taking care of each other, and inclusion. How do we have a multicultural team and manage how, in the way that can be extremely positive for a team. You have people with different backgrounds, even through people with special needs, such as and so that, as looking into like how do we take care of our people in the future, is going to change with a new generation coming, the generation the Z, and what they expect from their work life. These are, I think, the trends we see coming through, when we need to be really think carefully of how we're going to navigate the future as an industry.
Thank you for sharing. How can listeners get more involved? Here's the plug. How can listeners get more involved with World Chefs?
So go to worldchefs.org and sign up. There's a free World Chef account. You can sign up. It's a bit like LinkedIn for chefs. And there are lots of resources, both for jobs or internships, or just resources. There's a lot of webinars. We're doing podcasts, so you will get information on when and where these things are happening. Our physical events, competitions happening all over the world. So yes, sign up to worldchefs.org and open up your free account and be a part of it. Just get engaged.
Perfect. Be a part of it. Chef, the name of this podcast is The Ultimate Dish. I'm so honored that you joined us. We always ask before we say goodbye, in your mind, what is the ultimate dish?
Talking about my friend Charles Carroll, who I visited a couple of months ago in his home. He was just taking one of his few holiday breaks that he hasn't done in ages, and he received me and my wife in his home, and I was watching him from cooking breakfast for us with a brisk, slow cooked breakfast, Texan breakfast, and what have you. He was cooking dinners, and I was actually just, for me, watching him with his hands, putting all his love, like he was just, if he was competing in the Olympics, putting all his love into just that bacon, that egg on top of that brisk, and with all the herbs and everything, all the love that goes into that. I think that summarized the ultimate dish is the love you put into it. Doesn't matter the occasion, at any occasion. It's for your friends, so it's the love you give to others.
So sorry to put you on the spot, but what an answer. We haven't had that answer. I can't wait to tell Charles. Beautiful response. Thank you, Chef, and thank you for joining us today. We look forward to getting more people over to World Chefs, and I look forward to continued great success. I'll say hello to Michelle on your behalf a little bit later today, and thank you again. Really appreciate it. You're a superstar.
Thank you, Kirk. So looking forward to have you on my podcast. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Ultimate Dish Podcast, brought to you by Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. Visit escoffier.edu/podcast, where you'll find any materials mentioned during the podcast, including notes, links, and other resources. You can also browse other episodes and subscribe.